What happens when one of Hollywood's most revered voices meets a late-night host who's used to being the smartest man in the room? What you're about to hear isn't just another celebrity spat. It's the story of how Morgan Freeman, the voice that has narrated our lives, our dreams, and our deepest moments, walked onto a late-night stage expecting routine banter, and instead found himself in a confrontation that left an entire studio breathless. This wasn't clickbait drama. This was dignity versus arrogance, live unedited and unforgettable. And by the time it was over, people weren't just talking. They were rethinking everything they believed about late-night TV. Morgan Freeman stepped onto the set of Jimmy Kimmel Live with the quiet assurance of a man who had seen it all. At 78, he'd done thousands of interviews, handled invasive questions with grace, diffused tension with a single raised eyebrow, and carried himself as one of the most respected figures in Hollywood. The audience welcomed him with warm applause, the kind reserved for cultural icons. For decades, Freeman had been more than just an actor. He was America's collective conscience, its calm narrator. Jimmy Kimmel bounced out from behind his desk with his signature energy, half enthusiasm, half performance. "Morgan Freeman, everybody," he shouted, soaking in the crowd's reaction. The man, the myth, the voice that makes even my grocery list sound profound. The audience chuckled on cue. But there was something behind Jimmy's smile, something a little too rehearsed, a little too eager. The kind of smirk that said this isn't going to go how you expect. They settled into their chairs. Freeman sat with quiet poise. Kimmel leaned forward with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "So, Morgan," he said, his tone suddenly edged. "I gotta ask, and I know this might be awkward, but there've been rumors going around lately. Some folks say you've been difficult on set. Care to comment?" It was the kind of question designed not to inform, but to provoke. The studio air thinned. Kimmel's grin stayed frozen, but his eyes gleamed. He wanted a moment, something messy and viral. Freeman didn't flinch. His voice, calm and even, cut through the tension. "I'm not sure which rumors you're referring to," he said, "but I've been lucky to work with some truly extraordinary people over the years. I value professionalism, both in giving it and receiving it." The warmth in his voice remained, but beneath it was something firmer, unshakable, a warning without raising the volume. Jimmy saw an opening, or thought he did. "Come on, Morgan," he pushed. "You can level with us. I heard you walked off a set last month because the catering wasn't to your liking. That sounds a little Aiva, doesn't it?" The crowd shifted. Awkward chuckles faded into silence. Freeman's eyes didn't blink. "I think your source might be mistaken," he said. "I've never walked off a set because of catering or any other trivial thing. But I have walked away from environments where respect was absent and professionalism took a back seat. There it was, steel beneath silk. Kimmel didn't get it. Or maybe he did, but couldn't stop himself. "Disrespected?" he echoed with mock disbelief. "What does that mean for Morgan Freeman? Somebody forget to call you Mr. Freeman? Didn't hold a door open?" The sarcasm hit the air like static. Freeman leaned back slightly, hands folded, gaze sharpening. "Respect isn't about doors or titles, Jimmy. It's about basic human dignity. It's about entering conversations in good faith, not twisting them for spectacle or cheap applause." The silence after that was total. Kimmel's theatrical mask cracked just a bit. "Oh, so I'm not showing you respect now? I invited you on my show. I'm giving you free publicity. Isn't that enough?" Freeman didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Inviting someone onto your platform doesn't give you license to ambush them with gossip or ridicule them for entertainment," he said. "I came expecting a conversation, not a roast where I'm the unwilling target." The audience didn't know what to do. Laugh? Clap? Shift uncomfortably? Behind the scenes, producers were likely scrambling. Cut to commercial. Stay live. And for the first time that night, Jimmy Kimmel looked uncertain. Because Morgan Freeman hadn't come to play the game. He came to remind everyone, quietly, clearly, and powerfully, what real presence looks like. But instead of backing down, Jimmy doubled down. "Look, Morgan," he said, his voice tinged with irritation. "This is late-night television, not a UN press briefing. People tune in to laugh, to see the human side of celebrities, not to sit through lectures. If you can't handle a few tough questions without getting defensive, maybe you should stick to voiceovers, where no one has to look at your face." The words hit harder than he probably intended, and the moment they left his mouth, he knew it. A hush fell over the studio as the weight of the insult settled over the room like a fog. Morgan Freeman stood slowly, with deliberate grace. Chaos crackled in the air around him, but he moved as if above it all. "I think we're done here, Jimmy." His voice was soft, but it silenced everything. It held more authority than all of Jimmy's forced bravado combined. Gasps rippled through the audience as one of Hollywood's most respected icons turned to leave what should have been a friendly interview. Jimmy, sensing the moment slipping away, scrambled. "Wait! Hold on!" he called, panic cracking through, his usual smug calm. "Don't be so sensitive. We're just talking. Come on, sit back down. We'll talk about your movie." But Morgan was already walking toward the edge of the stage, each step an indictment. "This conversation ended," he said, not looking back. "The moment you decided disrespect was more valuable than discourse. I've spent a lifetime elevating the work I do. I'm not going to sit here while you drag it down for a viral clip." Jimmy's face flushed red. The audience didn't know whether to applaud or hide behind their phones. The cameras kept rolling, capturing what was quickly becoming one of the most surreal and uncomfortable moments in late-night TV history. "Fine, walk out then," Jimmy snapped, his voice cracking. "But don't blame me when people start calling you difficult. This is exactly what I was talking about. This kind of behavior." His words were meant to wound, but instead they only made the contrast clearer. Jimmy's pettiness against Morgan's poise. At the edge of the stage, Morgan paused. He turned slowly, his expression calm, but filled with a quiet, cutting disappointment. "Jimmy," he said evenly, "I've been in this business for over 50 years. I've worked with directors who screamed, producers who lied, and actors who threw tantrums that would embarrass toddlers. But rarely have I seen someone take such visible pleasure in trying to humiliate a guest on their own show." His voice, always commanding, now cut with surgical precision. The audience was dead silent. Even Jimmy's crew in the control room, watching helplessly, felt the air shift. "I wasn't trying to humiliate you," Jimmy stammered, suddenly small. "I was just doing my job, asking questions. If you can't handle a little back and forth, maybe you're the one with the problem." But even as he said it, the words rang hollow. They came not from conviction, but from panic. Morgan shook his head slowly. "Your job," he said, "is to make your guests feel welcome, to create a space where real conversations can happen. Your audience wants to know the people they admire, not watch them be ambushed." He paused, eyes locked on Jimmy's. "What you've done tonight isn't journalism. It's not entertainment. It's cruelty dressed up as comedy. You used your platform like a weapon." Jimmy tried to laugh it off, an unconvincing, forced chuckle. "Come on, Morgan. We're both, rich. We're both famous. No one's being attacked here. It's just TV. You're blowing this way out of proportion." Morgan didn't flinch. "That's where you're wrong, Jimmy. This isn't just television. This is about how we treat each other. Success and money don't excuse cruelty. And holding a microphone doesn't turn meanness into humor." His voice was steady, devastating. "When you invited me here, you were given a responsibility to honor someone's time, their dignity, their trust." Jimmy stood from behind his desk, desperate to regain control. "Okay, maybe we got off on the wrong foot," he said, voice almost pleading. "Let's start over. Talk about the movie. Keep it light, like it's supposed to be." But Morgan's response was final. "There's no starting over from this, Jimmy. You can't unsay what you said. You made a choice tonight about what kind of host you are, about what kind of man you are. And now," he added silently with his gaze, "you'll have to live with it." The room froze in that moment. The audience, the crew, even Jimmy himself. Trapped in the gravity of a man who didn't raise his voice, but still commanded the entire room. And then, Morgan Freeman walked off stage, and the door behind him closed, quiet, definitive, forever. They had never witnessed anything like this. A total collapse of the polite, polished facade that typically defined late-night television. Some audience members instinctively reached for their phones, sensing history unfolding in real time, while others remained frozen, caught in the uncomfortable gravity of the moment. "Fine. You want to leave? Then leave," Jimmy snapped, his voice betraying a mix of wounded pride and panic. "But don't stand there acting like some kind of moral authority. You knew what kind of show this was. You knew I asked tough questions. If you can't handle the heat, maybe you shouldn't be in the kitchen." Morgan's expression remained steady, but something in his eyes shifted. A glint of steel, a quiet power that reminded everyone why he had been a commanding presence on screen for decades. "Tough questions?" Morgan repeated, his voice low but cutting. "Is that what you call dredging up gossip and disguising mockery as curiosity? If that's your definition of journalism or comedy, you've deeply misunderstood both your profession and your responsibility to your audience." "Don't lecture me about journalism," Jimmy snapped, any semblance of charm long gone. "I'm not a reporter. I'm a comedian, an entertainer. People don't tune in for serious interviews. They want to laugh. They want to see celebrities. Be real. Not act like perfect PR-trained robots." "And that," Morgan said softly, yet his voice filled the room, "is the problem. You think cruelty is authenticity, that tearing people down makes for good television, that the audience wants spectacle over substance. That says more about you and what you think of the people who watch this show than it ever will about me." Jimmy opened his mouth, searching for a comeback, but nothing came. He looked like a man who'd wandered into deep water without realizing how far the shore had drifted. The cameras, still rolling, captured the moment with brutal clarity. The exact kind of viral humiliation Jimmy had tried to orchestrate for Morgan. "You know what the real tragedy is?" Morgan continued, his tone shifting into something almost paternal. "You have a platform that millions trust, a voice that could uplift, inspire, maybe even make a real difference. And instead you've turned it into a stage for cheap shots and sound bites, all for the sake of a few trending clips." "That's not fair," Jimmy said, his voice smaller now. "I've done good things with this show, helped people, supported careers. You can't erase all that because of one bad night. I'm not erasing your entire career, Morgan replied. I'm holding this moment accountable. The one where you ambushed a guest under the guise of entertainment. The one where you confused mockery for insight. And the one where, instead of listening, you doubled down on your own ego. Morgan's words rang with the conviction of a man who had weathered decades in the spotlight and still emerged with his integrity intact. The studio was dead silent, so still that even the faint hum of the air conditioning felt thunderous. Jimmy's band looked uneasy, his announcer nowhere to be seen, and the producers behind the scenes were undoubtedly scrambling for damage control. I came here tonight to share stories, to talk about my work, to be part of a legacy that has brought joy to people for generations, Morgan said, his voice tinged with quiet sadness. But instead, I found myself in a trap designed for controversy. Jimmy, desperate now, made one last plea. Morgan, please, just sit back down. Let's forget all this. Let's talk about your film, your career, whatever you want. I swear, I'll be respectful. Let's just reset. Morgan studied him for a long moment, and for a brief second it seemed like he might. But then he shook his head. Once, slowly. The gesture was final and unmistakable. That moment passed the second I sat in this chair, Jimmy, he said calmly. You had the chance to be a gracious host, a respectful peer, a professional. You made your choice, and now we both have to live with the consequences. His words landed with the weight of a verdict, not shouted but etched in stone. The air in the studio felt heavier now, the moment irreversibly altered. Jimmy slumped, in his chair, his trademark smirk now a distant memory. His show, his image, his entire brand as America's affable late-night darling was unraveling, live on air, in front of millions. Morgan, I'm sorry, okay? He said quietly, almost choking on the words. If I came off as disrespectful, I didn't mean to. Can't we just move past it? Have a normal interview? Morgan's expression remained unmoved. Your intentions are irrelevant when the result is so clear. When you choose to peddle rumors instead of asking thoughtful questions. When you mock professionalism rather than respecting it. When your stage becomes a courtroom where guests are presumed guilty until proven entertaining. Your intentions lose all meaning. His voice now carried the quiet authority of his most iconic roles. Unshakable, deeply human, and devastatingly sincere. This wasn't acting. This was raw, unfiltered truth, live, in real time. The audience was transfixed, caught in the gravity of a moment that felt more real than anything they'd ever seen on late-night television. Some pulled out their phones, recording. Others just stared, wide-eyed, as if witnessing the slow implosion of a man on national TV. It was a masterclass, not in comedy, but in consequence. Jimmy's usual supporters sat frozen, unable to laugh, unable to defend what had just unfolded. The silence was louder than any applause. But this is live television, Jimmy stammered, desperation creeping into his voice. Things happen. Conversations take unexpected turns. That's the thrill of it. That's what makes it real. You can't expect every interview to be perfect, every moment to be polished. Morgan Freeman didn't flinch. If anything, his expression softened. Not with forgiveness, but something almost pitying. Jimmy, he said calmly, there's a difference between an unexpected moment and a deliberate attempt to humiliate your guest. There's a difference between being real and being cruel. The fact that you don't see that is exactly why we're here. Jimmy glanced around the studio, searching for rescue. His bandleader avoided eye contact. His announcer had vanished. Even his most loyal staff seemed to be shrinking into the shadows, distancing themselves from the train wreck still in motion. "You're being unfair," Jimmy said, his voice barely a whisper now. "You're making me look like some kind of monster. When all I did was ask a few questions. Maybe I misjudged the tone. Maybe I could have asked differently. But that doesn't make me evil." Morgan's gaze held firm. "I'm not making you look like anything, Jimmy. I'm simply refusing to play along while you try to make me look foolish for your audience's amusement. The way you feel right now, the way you look right now, that's not on me. That's the result of your choices." His words cut clean. No rage, no raised voice. Just surgical precision. Jimmy stood behind his desk, like a man who had just witnessed his own career unraveling in slow motion. The audience didn't know whether to clap, gasp, or simply sit in stunned silence. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every painful beat of what was fast becoming one of the most unforgettable moments in late-night TV history. "I've been doing shows like this for decades, Jimmy," Morgan continued. "I've faced hosts who were nervous, hosts who were unprepared, hosts who challenged me, professionally, personally. But I've never sat across from a host who seemed to take such obvious pleasure in tearing his guest down. That's not comedy. That's cruelty with a studio audience." Jimmy's face had gone pale. His hands trembled slightly as he clutched the edge of his desk. "What do you want me to do?" he asked, almost pleading now. "What do you want me to say? I've apologized. I've tried to start over. What more can I do?" Morgan looked at him, not with malice, but with unwavering resolve. "What I want is for you to understand that some things can't be fixed with an apology. Some damage can't be undone with a do-over. I want you to reflect on the man you were tonight, and ask yourself if that's really who you want to be." He paused, letting the weight of those words land. "But if you walk out now, Jimmy, if you let me leave this studio, that becomes the story. That's the headline. Morgan Freeman walks out on Jimmy Kimmel, and that will follow both of us. Forever." Jimmy looked shattered. The desperation in his voice was unmistakable. "You're right," he said. "People will remember this, but not the way you think. They'll remember that when faced with disrespect disguised as entertainment, you stood your ground. You kept your dignity. But Morgan, I have a family. I have a team. I have a show. Don't destroy everything I've built over one bad moment." For the first time, a flicker of something passed across Morgan's face. Compassion. The kind that had made him beloved across generations. But his voice remained steady, final. "Jimmy, I'm not destroying your career. You did that the moment you decided cruelty was more valuable than courtesy. That mockery was worth more than respect. I'm just choosing not to be complicit." And with that, Morgan turned and walked toward the exit. Measured, dignified, every step a quiet declaration of principle. The audience sat in stunned silence as one of Hollywood's most respected figures exited the stage, his reputation untouched, his dignity intact. Jimmy remained frozen behind his desk, watching it all slip through his fingers. His guest, his control, his credibility. The cameras didn't look away. They captured everything. The devastation, the disbelief. The moment Jimmy Kimmel realized this wasn't just a bad segment. It was the moment everything changed. Morgan paused at the studio doors, turning back one final time. "To everyone who came here tonight expecting to be entertained," he said softly, I'm sorry you had to witness this instead. You deserved better, from both of us, but especially from your host." And with that, Morgan Freeman walked out of the studio, leaving behind a man whose world had just collapsed, an audience unsure how to process what they'd seen, and a moment that would be replayed, dissected, and remembered. Long after both men had left the spotlight, Jimmy stood alone. Several long seconds passed. The studio was silent enough to hear someone breathe. And then, finally, he looked into the camera. His voice cracked as he said, "We'll be right back." But everyone watching knew nothing would ever be quite the same again. What do you think? Have you ever seen a guest handle live disrespect with such dignity and control? Drop a comment below. Was Morgan Freeman right to walk out? Or should he have stayed and salvaged what he could? And don't forget to subscribe. Because moments like this, when the mask slips and someone's true character is revealed, those are the stories that define not just careers, but who we really are.